Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Schilowitz and Rony Abovitz for This Week in XR. It's February 17th, 2023. Hey, guys.
Morning, gentlemen.
Hey. We live in interesting times.
Yes, indeed.
You have to, there wasn't, in terms of the news this week, there wasn't a big headline, except the AI whirlwind is blowing all around us.
Yeah.
And it's, I can't compare it to XR. To me, it feels more like a smartphone or the internet. Like it's going to have really far-reaching effects in so many different verticals, and we're really, as we were in like 1994, just starting to figure out what this possibly means, not just for our own area of expertise, but to the world.
Yeah, I've explained. I'm curious if you guys have had to do this in your life over the last week, last couple of weeks. Explain the difference between how Google 1.0, Google Classic, as I guess we'd call it, scrapes the internet to find relevant links and then sort of ranks them and builds them, versus what these AI systems are doing, which doesn't actually scrape the internet. It takes a pre-existing human-built database that they keep adding material to, but it doesn't go out and sort of just hunt around to find links that exist. It just takes billions and billions of words, billions and billions of bits of data, and builds a training model to link them together into something that seems like perceptible speech. And oddly enough, it sort of works. And it's become this kind of phenomenon of just taking a data set and manipulating a data set. And that's kind of the sort of dirty little secret of all this, which is kind of fascinating. As to a lot of people's sort of comedy of what it does when it finds what it has in its data set and literally can't come up with a relevant answer because it's not modern enough. Like I was reading about, apparently somebody was asking where could he find the shows to watch Avatar, and I think it was the Bing version of it. Said you can't. It doesn't exist.
Right. The movie's not finished yet because
right,
it's looking at
right.
Because its data set ends in like 2019.
Correct.
So it's reading, it's crawling articles, or it's used articles to build its information,
right.
that were from 2019. So it's a little behind the times.
When this user kept asking and prompting it different questions, it got madder and madder. Like, right. It was definitely turned into how.
But presumably, its real purpose, as it gets at least initially integrated into search engines, is to keep you from clicking away to get a little piece of information. Who was best actor in 1950? Well, the person with the best memory in the world would just tell you.
Right.
But on a search engine, I'm going to click and read. It's not an instant answer.
Yeah. It's a fascinating moment in time. To your point, Charlie, we live in interesting times.
Charlie, what I think it's like, it's how magicians do their work against audiences. What I think is, like, most people, unfortunately, don't have long view thinking or big system thinking. So if you go back to like the history of computing, like to Alan Turing, even before, and just follow it, and the bursts of AI in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and neural networks, and you see the evolution of CPUs and GPUs. What's going on right now is actually all part of that lineage. And if you just see that slice in time, you're like, oh my God, what's happened? But if you understand the history and understand the system view and the connected power of what's going on in computing, it's actually fairly, I mean, it's very cool. But the folks I know deep in computing are like, yes, this is obviously what should be happening right now. But I think to a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, it's some kind of magical something or the other, but it's just raw computing power with layers of sophisticated new forms of neural net, like stable diffusion or adversarial networks, and these different things coming together at scale. By the way, our brain may not be that different, and that's probably the most frightening and shocking thing to people, that we are looking in a mirror of how we might operate. That's the
How
most
we just
disturbing.
use our data set. Yeah.
It mimics cognition so well that you think it has cognition. I
Right.
mean, Eugene Chung, the director, told ChatGPT to write a short script of an orc breaking up with an elf in an American diner. And within a few minutes, he had actually produced a video of that scene. It was written, by the way, in iambic pentameter, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody who knows how to ask the right questions could have a YouTube channel getting millions of views right now.
Charlie, why doesn't it have cognition? Maybe that's not this episode, but like, I think it's actually human arrogance to think that something not us, like we used to have that arrogance about animals, about like, you know, why can't other things in the universe have intelligence and cognition? I think we're constantly showing ourselves that, yes, we are not the only things on this planet that matter, but we keep reverting back to this like level of human arrogance that only us can have intelligence. We're the only ones that can have cognition or perception. Maybe that's just not true, and we need to be less arrogant as a species, and maybe that's a good thing.
Yikes, 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 yikes.
It's the,
I mean,
Too much for Friday morning. Too much for Friday morning.
it's the what would Jim Cameron do thesis.
Kevin Roose, you know, the tech writer for the New York Times, spent time with AI being on the Microsoft campus and said that he came away with the creeps. He got the bot to say it would like to be human and exhibit hate and love and jealousy. It could be too much like us.
This is part of what we're all concerned about. Welcome to Skynet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's, you know, seems less and less crazy when you make a machine that can make valid creative choices that used to be made by humans.
Charlie, I think one of the flaws, this is, I'll just throw it out there very quickly. We are not necessarily thinking about how we evolved. We're making a super deity-like thing. And if you look at the universe, the scale of what we're trying to do, the amount of things we're trying to pack into this one thing, it should not be a surprise that we're creating instability, uncontrollability, and none of this should be a surprise to anyone. But that is the train running down the tracks without brakes at an idea, which is HAL. And there are many other better ideas for AI, but why is all the money going into creating like the super version of HAL? Which is unstable and chaotic.
It's economics, is it not?
I don't know. I think it's people who literally woke up one morning and watched 2001 and said, I'm going to build that. And that's the last thing they thought about. And then they probably didn't see other movies. Like I'm not really like the inception idea of why chase the monolithic, super scary idea. It's like when you're 7 years old, you saw 2001, I'm going to go build HAL. And then you never thought about it again. And you just spent the rest of your life doing it. Like there may be some weird motivational drive for the folks making this that is quite not rooted in what we want as a people.
Rony, have you read any of the books by Neil Suarez? Daniel Suarez, Damon, and those books?
Right. And actually met Daniel. He's a super bright author. Love him.
Yeah, I'm thinking I was blending our buddy Neil Stevenson with Daniel. It's like, no, not Neil Suarez, Daniel Suarez. Books, Charlie, if you haven't read these books, it's an extraordinarily relevant time to read. I think it's a series of 3 of these books about, I don't even want to spoil it. Just anybody that's listening, if you haven't read these books by Daniel Suarez, do a little chat GPT on Daniel Suarez.
Oh, Ted, let's go better. Let's get him. Let's get him on the podcast.
We should get him. Yeah, that's you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
that would be brilliant.
I'm a golden retriever for you guys.
Yes. Go get him.
So other XR news this week, we'll go through it quickly and then we'll get to Hugo Swart, our guest VP of XR at Qualcomm, which has turned out to be probably the most important company in the ecosystem. Bigscreen is launching a VR headset.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've known about this for a long time because Paramount is a partner with Bigscreen, you know, on the content side. And they have been, just like a lot of companies, finding interesting pivot points. And they took a big bet on this My overt critique, as you've heard me talk about many times, is a wire in today's world of VR is no bueno. It is not viable. It is not scalable. I think they'll have an enthusiast audience for this. It's a remarkably capable device. Its form factor is really interesting, but it's a throwback to the VR of yore, where you have to use Vive trackers and a Vive system to connect to it. So for guys like us, sure, it's great. For super gamers, it's great. But as a scalable, logical device, I think if they're working on a Gen 2 that's wireless with inside-out tracking, they better work really fast.
Charlie, I looked at it as like, if this company with whatever level of funding they have can do it, my God, what should Meta and Apple be able to do in VR that hits so many more marks, because they're spending like 100 times, maybe 500 times more than this company. But what I do admire what they did is they've pushed down the weight. They were thoughtful about that problem, which some companies, they think it's okay to put 700-800 grams in your head, which it's not. And I think they're sort of moving in the direction but the question is, like, are they just an indicator of where the big guys will go? So is this like a blip in time, and then the Apples or Metas or someone else picks up on that, then takes it one more level, makes it wireless, gets to 6K per eye? That's kind of where everybody wants, right? If you're going to do it in VR, just get there. You have the money. Big guys, you have the money there, do it. Little players are showing you up right now.
Well, the thing I said when I read this was external tracking towers. I mean, okay, when I put on my HP, sounds like this is probably a better headset, but I don't have external tracking towers, and I'm willing to take a hit in optics to get rid of those things.
Yeah.
I don't live in a place, my office is not well suited to that. So I was very, very happy when we started to get external tracking like that, inside-out tracking like that. I think it was a big advance for us and super necessary.
There is, and this gets really geeky, but there really is a really interesting nuance about the value of using external trackers to track a device versus trackers that are on the device looking outward.
Of course.
There's a slight difference in how well the perception of VR is when the device is tracking you versus the other way around.
If you're in VR chat and you're doing something like, sword fighting or dancing, which is, by the way, super popular on VR chat and on Twitch and YouTube, because people are streaming this stuff, and they're using multiple trackers. They're not using just 2 trackers. So for certain things, for full body tracking, you've got to have external tracking towers, or you've got to be wearing straps or some other method of tracking your body in space, which is obviously
but even more core to that, there's an actual interesting difference between how your brain perceives the virtual reality experience when you're using external trackers. So I actually still have a room in my house that is a Vive room, from back in the day when we were doing Vive with an original Vive in it. And every once in a while I go into it just to remember how much better it actually is to go into some of those experiences than do things on a device.
Well, the PC is so much more powerful.
It's just better. So the idea of having this ultralight headset, and to the point of the weight, they didn't actually reduce the weight. They just displaced the weight. Basically, they took all that processing and said, it's a viewer that has almost no weight, but you have to connect it to the weight device, which is the giant PC with the wires and the trackers. So it's a trade-off, right? But for super enthusiasts, it's great, but it's going to find a very, very small market is the unfortunate thing about it.
Let's bring Alex in from the green room. Alex Herrity, co-founder and CEO of Anima, which just released Only Bots. Only Bots are an AR enabled AI pet. So combining two of the things that we love to talk about. Alex, welcome. Great to see you.
It is great to be here. I'm so excited about it. My favorite topic.
Yeah. Have you ever met Rony and Ted?
No, I haven't. So this doubles as, a great way to meet as well.
Very nice to meet you.
Great meeting you, Alex.
So well, first of all, you have an amazing biography, by the way. Alex has worked at Epic Games, and he also worked at HBO, and he started a company which he sold to Flipboard. And so since then, I guess in 2021, you started your company.
Yeah, we just passed the two year mark. Yeah. Yeah,
And
I mean,
are
it feels like we started it, much longer, because me and Neil, my co-founder, have known each other for a decade. That startup that was sold to Flipboard was me and Neil. So they're ideas we've been working on for a long time, but yeah, officially 2 years.
And is Only Bots the first release, or have you guys put up other content before it?
No, we put a few other releases out, but we're definitely more in the experimental stage. So they were, around AR art, they were AR sculptures that changed based off of where you place them in the world. And really now Only Bots is kind of like the flagship. This is like us showing what we think is possible. If you ask my kids what I do now, they would say like, yeah, he makes pets that live in your phone.
So would you say this is kind of like the evolution of the very famous world of Tamagotchi that had a fairly long moment in the lives of kids and
In the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, what's crazy is they're kind of back too.
Well, there's a whole
yeah.
NFT moment around Tamagotchi, which of course I think has dropped to the crater like everyone else. But
Yeah.
the conceptual idea of a digital pet goes back, like VR goes back. It never, like people think, oh, VR is fairly novel concept. Not really. No.
No,
Digital pet is a
definitely.
fairly lengthy run.
Yeah. I would say if I could, the sort of shortest explanation of Only Bots is definitely like if a Tamagotchi was invented today, what would a virtual pet be? Well, you'd be able to see it in AR and place it in your house. It would know what's around it. You'd be able to talk to it through AI. And you'd be able to own it, so like there's sort of a combination of AI, AR, blockchain technology. And the truth is that most people who are going to see an Only Bot like don't need to care about any of that. It's meant to be fun. But yeah, I mean, I think a Tamagotchi is probably the closest line that we can say, in terms of the behavior and the emotion you feel towards them.
Right. And what is the business proposition? Like, why does it make sense to start a company around this? How do you effectively, keep yourself alive, keep the company alive and growing? What's the logic behind that?
Yeah. So the sort of nexus of how we founded Anima was, we've always been big believers in AR and kind of virtual goods in general, but the specific issue we saw with AR was that there hasn't been really a way to collect or own it or form that relationship you do when you feel like any sense of kind of ownership of things in AR. And related to that, there was no way to like make things that were collectible in AR. So Anima was founded as the idea of like, how do we make that path happen? And then how do we make it so those creation, like one, we make those, but we also enable others to as well. And kind of as the company's grown, we've realized like it's on us to really showcase what's possible here. And then, the goal is certainly for us to open up our tech and enable more and more creators and brands and people and companies to build using this kind of technology. That's the long-term vision. And we've opened it up to some partners, but we're also really focusing on like showing what's possible first. And, it's not that different than kind of what Epic did, where, Unreal Engine is the core of the company, really the heart of it. But they, of course, are always going to be building games using that technology. And then occasionally one of them may turn into a Fortnite, that you could never predict, but happens. But still, UE is kind of like the heart of it. And for us, we feel like we are an AR tech company, for sure. And we want to make AR, more and more dynamic and easier to use and collectible and all these things. But we use Only Bots as the way to show that. And the business is, with Only Bots, they're purchasable, and over time we'll add content to them, not unlike a season pass in a game like Fortnite, where there's more quests you can build and grow. And I think if you're compared to another kind of thing in AR, sort of a combination of Tamagotchi and maybe Pokemon Go and what Niantic did there.
And these are public now. You can go out and buy one as a customer.
You can. They're like a small limited edition number of them right now that are available. We'll be doing a much wider release soon. For us, we wanted to figure out a couple things on the business side around utilizing AI and how people will use it. I mean, we're all seeing sort of like the challenges with opening up AI to people and what can happen. And given that we're building a product that we think is for a younger demo, we just want to be really careful with that at first. So
and the goal is to go wide distribution and keep the cost low, or are they more exclusive with a higher cost preference? What's the
definitely long term. The goal is to make these lower costs.
What do they cost now?
Right now, it's a small NFT collection. There's only 2,000 of them. They're only available in the secondary market for several $100s. So, we'll have a path from this small collection to a much bigger one soon.
Right.
But the goal is to go wide. Yeah, for sure.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
You mentioned AI a lot, but not all AI is created equal. So help us understand, right? We all know how an AR pet would work, and you're anchoring them to planes, and I assume there's some limited interaction you can do or get from them, but the main ingredient is, of course, the relationship.
Yeah.
So you're using AI to create that relationship. How good is the AI? Does it exist just inside the app, or is it accessing a cloud, or what are the benefits of the AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we found the most benefit is it established an emotional relationship with a digital character in a way that was harder to do before they could talk. I mean, obviously we released only bots, and now, like, if you're not in the beta, they don't talk yet. So soon they will for everyone. But I think what that does is just enables anyone who has one to feel connected to it. So what we're doing is it's backed by GPT-3. So we're tapping into what OpenAI has built. We then have our own model on top of that, where we develop personalities for each one, their own backstories, so that every single OnlyBot has its own story. It has its own secrets. It has its own ever-evolving kind of history, and its own like voice and its own personality. So some of them are like a skater that talks in 90s slang. Another one might be like a poet who always rhymes. And they're much deeper. I mean, the personality prompts are pretty intensely long, because it just allows things to be that much more interesting. But we don't know what they're going to say, obviously, every time you ask them a question. And I think our biggest takeaway from it has just been how much more you feel connected to something in AR when you can talk to it. And there's a bit more to it than that, because in AR, we're able to know what's around it. They can also both talk to each other if you have more than one bot in the scene, and respond to things that are near it. So it knows there's a table next to it, so it can comment on that. And it knows where you are, and it can comment on that. And so we have all these variables in AR that enable AI to do things that are missing from a chat interface, because we have access to the camera. I mean, that sounds obvious, obviously, but like in practice, it feels, really special. And then we're sort of wrapping all of that in a format that is fun. Like it's not heavy. This is something that's goofy. Most of them talk in slang. One of them thinks she's like a Gen Z TikTok influencer. Like, these are not heavy for the most part. They're meant to be just entertaining.
You said the audience is kids. I mean, you're describing something that seems like for adults, or at least older teenagers.
Yeah, so maybe my generic term for kids, as I'm getting older, starts to mean older than it sounds. But yeah, I think the generation that's growing up making things in Roblox and is used to both making things in 3 and feeling a sense of ownership of them, and is who we're aiming for. And yeah, when I say kids, like, I've got kids 7 and under, but they love them. But no, we're not aiming to, like, market and sell things to little kids. But we certainly are seeing like them being interested in this. So yeah, no, it's definitely more in the Roblox age group, into the Fortnite one.
And are you VC funded, or what's the funding bucket that you're working
We
with?
are, yeah. We're VC funded by folks like Coinbase in the crypto world, and some execs at Riot in the gaming world, and people like Packy McCormick, who's written a lot on these kind of topics too.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who finds the first real hit in this category, because we know that there's a number of folks dancing this dance. So it's kind of an interesting approach to seeing what comes next. What is the one that latches on, right? That everybody's talking about, that breaks through. That's
yeah. I mean, I definitely believe in the idea that the next big thing looks like a toy, right? I think there's a lot of truth in that. It's certainly how we're how we're approaching this, is that, like, it's fun first. And I'll say, like, OnlyBots have said things that have brought a tear to my eyes because they've been so deep. But most of it is just entertaining. It makes me laugh. Obviously, like, the way my kids react and play with them is like totally different than the way an adult does. but I think there's something that feels so much more entertaining than, you know, most other ways we've interacted with AI and AR to this date. I mean, that, you know, I think it just adds a realness to the.
And the primary interface today is mobile, is on a phone. Is that how you're accessing the?
Yeah. So the tech side of it, we have some support for Android, but we're mostly on iPhone so far. We use a thing called app clips as opposed to full-on app, but we have an app as well. But so you can scan a QR code, pop into the AR experience within about 2 seconds. We try to reduce the friction as much as possible. Obviously, like there's friction issues with AR at times. So we want to try to make that as quick as possible. So yeah, you just scan a QR code, you can be looking or talking to a bot within a couple seconds.
Alex, one quick thought for you, because I did probably way too much experimentation and kind of what you're doing. I would say everything you can do to keep the company going through the end of the decade is going to be critical, because the golden age of, I think, of what you're trying to build is like late 2020s through the 2030s, where, you know, these things get solved, they're at scale, the computer vision, the AI is just beyond belief awesome. The CPU, GPU rendering is no longer in the way of anything. So if you can like find, stay small, find an audience, be a cult company, stay profitable, take a little bit of capital, but like if you could just hang on, like the predicted years of where things are going to go, you probably have some sense of that. But I would just say generally, if you can hang on, what you're building could be really, really big in the 2030s. If you just survive as a cult until then. It's just because I think nothing you're saying is wrong. There's so many pieces that are coming together. It's all about just stay alive in what I think of as like the middle period of XR, so that you are there to enjoy the big win. Like it would be sad to have the right idea and not to be there when it all comes together in the most awesome way. So just do everything in your power to just kind of stay small, low burn rate, go as far as you can, make it into the late 2020s and beyond. And then I think you'll just see this amazing blossoming of your idea in so many cool ways.
Yeah, in the startup world, we call this the cockroach approach. Be a cockroach.
Be a cockroach. Yeah, just
There's
sip a little bit of water. You're going across the desert, eat little
Live
things.
through everything. You're a cockroach.
Create a cult audience, but like just make it there. And there's like there's a huge rainbow of what you're trying to do when it all comes together. And like people like Ted and I know what's coming. So just hang on with as much as you can, you know.
Yeah, no. I mean, I really value that feedback. Certainly there's few people, or if anyone in the world, who's thought about this more than you.
I don't think anyone has. So I'm just
I fully believe that.
I mean, you're Tim Sweeney in his basement right now in the late 80s. And look how long it took for Epic to turn into what they just have, that endurance. And like, let's talk again. Well, hopefully before, but like in 10 years, let's play this back. I think this guidance to you is going to be pretty spot on.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing we've learned, even, you know, obviously the broad vision of Anima as a company is, you know, is wide, is like anyone can create and collect an AR. I think for that to be compelling, you know, what you're talking about is like so necessary. You know, what we found is that if we're able to focus on something narrower, which is virtual pets, right? That like you want to collect, you enjoy talking to, like that could be, you know, for us, we see that as a pretty substantial opportunity to be a financial hit and allow us to keep moving towards that big vision that requires those other pieces to come in place, you know, that you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, the good news is I've been through the startups world a couple times now, and we're not the type to burn through our funding quickly. I'm the only non-engineer in our company. So I'm the only one who doesn't write code in our you know, our team of 8 or so.
Have you followed Ed Sachi's work with Wolves in the Wall, which is a VR experience which features an AI-driven character, and you are her imaginary friend in the simulations, based on a story by Neil Gaiman. And so the character that Sachi created was called Lucy, and he tried to give Lucy a life outside of the VR film that he made. And so he had created a system using GPT-1. So this is like 4 years ago, where Lucy could text with you and would remember who you are and have some context to have a relationship with you. And they did a pilot with like 200 people. And of course, as a reporter or a writer, you never actually hear how these things turn out. You're only sort of there at the press release, right? Oh my God, Anima may raise $9 million. Wow, these guys are a real company. And I'm never there at the end, as Rony said, 10 years from now to say, well, how did that go?
Right. Yeah. You just get to check in at the milestone.
Yeah, so I don't know what
that they
happened
wanna
with
talk
that, but it
about.
was a very
Yeah.
early example of somebody trying to create a relationship between a user and an AI. There was no,
Yeah.
as I said, AR element, which I'm sure adds a lot of interactivity to it. But the idea that you have this relationship with an imaginary character, it is compelling, provided that there's enough depth to it.
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with it, but I'm gonna dig in. Yeah, and I think we definitely see a few trends coming together at the same time that make us feel like, OnlyBot specifically can work, and one of them is, even though sort of the broader, widespread use of AR as a creative platform, maybe dependent on a few other things to happen first. Maybe it's dependent on Apple to sort of enter full-fledged, or, for us to be wearing headsets. But I think that we are seeing people getting comfortable interacting with AI, and we'll see that more and more, right? I don't think there's anything we can't put that back in a bottle now. But how do we do that in a way that's like fun and funny and not intimidating, and like not, an OnlyBot hasn't told me yet that it's been a good Bing, thank God, or whatever the phrase is that has been going around, and, we're able to put guardrails on that. And then on that, on the same note, there are some like digital good headwinds happening around how people do want to feel a sense of ownership of what they're collecting. And, we don't talk about these as NFTs as much as possible. We don't think we think it's a piece of technology, not the story. And so we think, these things coming together and then sort of packaging in a way that feels like fun and, emotionally rewarding, lets us like, it feels like it's the right time in a lot of ways. But, to Ronnie's point, it's going to get so much bigger, and it's important that we're ready for that. I don't think it'd be the right time for us to start our company right ahead of that change. Like, I think it's important for us to learn and expand and grow now, but grow in a way that's like indicative of the current state of the market, not ahead of it.
That's really smart. That's about all the time we have, Alex. It's great to see you. Thank you so much, and congratulations on OnlyBots. Not sure if I'm going to go get one in the first round. I may wait for the less expensive, more sophisticated, more developed version. But
can you still get one, or are they sold out?
They're sold out right now. We will be releasing some more, and guys, I have your contacts, so maybe I'll.
Let me get a review.
I would love to see you guys, as some early testers, because I think you'd enjoy it.
We'll bring one on the show next time.
Yeah,
come back and bring your pet.
Yeah, we did have an article about us like last week in some press, and I think it was the first time an OnlyBot was interviewed. I don't think we had done that in any of the articles. So
can we live stream it? Like, that would be so cool, Alex, to have you and the OnlyBot in another window, all of us talking together. Is that possible?
It's like super easy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could set that up pretty easily.
Yeah, of course it is. He just gets his partner to sit there with his smartphone, and we turn on Zoom and screen share.
Yeah, no, super easy.
That would be cool.
All right, well, that's a date. Alex, good luck, and let's not have one of those relationships where I don't hear from you ever again. I want to know what happens with your company.
Charlie, I promise there will be a reason for us to talk again.
Oh, I know, and we're always going back and forth on social media. That's why it's so much fun for me to meet you in person.
Yeah, same. All right, thanks, guys. It was great.
All right, have a great weekend, everybody. That's our show. See you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.